Hello, Jeremy with Stellar Sky here, and today we're going to go over soldering LED. And so a couple things I want to point out right away. This is our RGBW LED strip that we carry, and you can see it's RGB and W. These cut lines are marked with a little scissor icon, and you can see here, if we have any of this ink where we're going to solder on the end here, we want to cut that off. That's gonna hurt us, not help us. So we just want to very carefully trim that up, and so now there's no black ink on top of that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tin these ends here, and then we're going to tin our wires. And then this little guy is a handy tool for holding things in place, so basically you don't burn your fingers. It's kind of nice. Let's get to it. The solder I'm using is 60-40, which is 60% tin, 40% lead solder. Pretty standard rosin core. And this is about 0.6 millimeter diameter, like the smaller stuff's working with, smaller LED. So we're going to make sure our soldering iron is clean. We have a little brass sponge here. And then we're going to go ahead and just tin the ends of these, the end of this strip here. I'll try to keep my arms out of the way here of the camera. There's a little bit of ink on there, and I'll show you here in just a second what I mean by that ink. So we have some solder on there. And you can see where the little black X is for the scissors, the little icon, how the solder did not go there. That's why we want to get rid of much of that as we can. Now that's not going to hurt anything because we have plenty of solder right here attached to the copper firmly, so we'll go from there. We're going to use 5 conductor wire, and so I have this 5 conductor wire here, which is RGBW wire, and then there's a power carrier here. So we're going to go ahead and tin the ends of these. It'll make our life a lot easier. So we can use the same holder. I'm going to bend this up a little bit because we're not worried about connecting it to the LED right now. We just want to tin the ends of these wires. So I want to separate them a little bit so it's a little bit easier, and then we'll go ahead and get them tinned. Solder always follows heat, and so don't worry about covering the whole thing. If you hold the heat on there, you'll see the solder kind of suck down. Let me clean this tip off here and I'll show you what I mean. If I go here on the white, and if I hold heat there, sometimes you can move the solder down, and the solder always follows heat. Sometimes to get it started, you can just touch the iron, you can see the wire, and then the solder melts with the wire here. You can see the insulation starting to melt back a little bit too. That's okay. Once we have the strip tinned and the wire tinned, we can go ahead and take this out. We can straighten this out a little bit here. And now it's ready to be soldered on the LED. Now at this point, we don't need any more solder because all the solder we need is here and here. And so we can go ahead and just get to it. If you can get the wire just on top of there, you simply just have to melt this solder and make sure the bottom one melts, and that's it, just like that. If you have a pair of tweezers, if you're using this, or something like a little small screwdriver maybe, it'll make your life a lot easier. We can just take a pair of tweezers and just hold it over there. Simply melt that. That's done. Take the next one. Melt that. That's done. Take this. Melt that. That's done. Make sure you give it time to just harden a little bit before you move it, because if you do this and you move it, you'll move right off of there. Or sometimes let you go that and you get a kind of wire that's kind of wandering off. So make sure that's stayed in place and it cools down just a little bit, solidifies before you move it. After reviewing the footage, this angle is a little bit closer and shows a little bit more detail about what's going on with the solder. The soldering iron gets hot, melts the solder on the wire, and then the heat transfers down and melts the solder on the LED tape. This is repeated for all the colors, and you don't need to hold it a long time, maybe a half a second, until both solders are melted and become one, and then you can take it away very shortly after that. You don't want to hold on too long. You risk damaging the LED tape itself and the traces. This is also done without tweezers, but twisting the wire with your hands. And that will work. Now, I'm going to demonstrate what not to do. So if you get too much solder on there, and you're going along and you're soldering, don't think you have enough solder, and you're doing this, and you get that. That is called a bridge. Now, the red and the green channel are connected. So when you try to go red, it'll come through as gold. When you try to do green, it'll come through as gold because the red and the green are connected. To get rid of that, if you simply clean your tip, so your tip is nice and clean, solder always follow heat. The solder will want to go on the tip. And so you might need a couple jobs, but there you go. You can wipe that kind of right off, and then you're free and clear. Sometimes you will get a minute amount of solder, just a small, ever so strand of solder, and it won't power a big strip, but it'll do voltage drop and mess up color short range. So you want to be careful of that too. I'm just going to pull this over a little bit because that needs to be right there. And that's it. You now have wire soldered on the strip. I'm also going to show soldering LED strip to LED strip. And so if you line the LED strips up here and get them pretty close, and we can solder the rest. And what you want to do is just put a little bit of solder on one. Make sure these are lined up. This isn't quite lined up, and that's kind of important. It's not super critical, but if you can, go ahead and do it the right way. And then you want to kind of tin this strip and tin this strip, and then just go ahead and bridge, add solder like that, and then they're connected, and go ahead and do the whole thing. You'll notice here on the red we have the scissor icon, which we discussed before. So there's a little bit of ink in there, but there you can put enough solder on there where it's not going to matter and it'll flow through. Right over the scissor here. As you can see, I'm feeding a little bit of solder. I'm doing the blue on one and kind of going to the blue on one, and then we want to kind of get them both melting and then feed solder in there so it leaves kind of a bubble. And we want to make sure that they're all connected like they are now, but in no way, shape, or form are any of the solder pools touching the other solder pool. So there's always space and there's no connection between these alleys here. Otherwise you're going to get weird amperage draws, and you're going to get incorrect coloring from color mixing. And you definitely don't want to short out any of these negatives to your power supply, because that's a direct short, resulting in big no-nos. Thanks for watching.